Good Mountain Monday morning to you. Welcome to our program, and we hope that you will stick right here with us. We got some interesting historical facts about a couple of different topics here, 2 or 3. And I'm Robert Oby, your host, along with the mountain man here, Wayne McCarter. How you doing this morning?
I'm good.
You ready to go?
I'm ready.
Now, what we need the people out there to do?
We want them to text and tweet and
Text
share.
and tweet, click and share, go down there and comment and let us know where you're listening from and do all that good old stuff and let us know that you're right here with us. And do that texting and tweeting, and get all your friends, your relatives, and your neighbors, and even your enemies. They might need to hear this. Maybe they won't be an enemy no more. Let them know that Mountain Fun Life has got Mountain Monday morning coming on here, and we're going to have us a lot of good old mountain fun. And so we're going to go out to our intro, and then we'll be right back.
This attraction has it all, whether you're 2 years old or 90 years young, with hundreds of beautiful tropical birds and thousands of flowers, plants, and trees. Folks who visited our park have said, "I've never seen this many birds in one place. This must be what the Garden of Eden was like. The most beautiful and peaceful place I have ever been. These gardens rival the best. The best value in the Smokies. You'll want to visit Parrot Mountain and Gardens. Call or visit us online. We'll see you there."
Thank you, Parrot Mountain. You've been there, right?
Been there. I like Parrot Mountain. It's
you
cool.
like Parrot Mountain? I'm just going to have to go check that out. I've not been.
It is.
I didn't know that much about it.
If you like birds.
Oh, I do.
You know me. I'm a bird man.
I guess I got a lot of the talking.
Don't know so much about all the talking, but they got a lot. Oh, they got a lot of birds.
Well,
there are even new ones. When I were there, they was some just born. It was really.
Oh, you got to see the little ones,
yeah,
huh?
It's been a while, but it's really cool.
Well, if you folks like bird watching, and that's a good place. Just go up and check out Parrot Mountain. Appreciate you folks. And we've got last Monday morning we were talking about the ancient scriptures, and I had some Hebrew and Aramaic and all that I was kind of telling the folks about. And I've got so many topics here this morning, I really don't know where to start. I've got some interesting information that I had never heard of before. I was really didn't, not that I can remember. Of course, in school, I don't know, it may have been taught and I just wasn't paying attention. Sometimes I didn't pay too much attention. But anyway, I've got some interesting information, some facts that I thought when I found these and looked over them that was really intriguing. But kind of picking up where we left off. Now, I have this morning here, you see this big old thick copy here, and if this will show up on the camera, this is a reprint of the original Geneva Bible, the 15 and 60 edition of the Geneva Bible. Now, there's some interesting, and by the way, this is written in the Old English letter style that's even hard for me to read. Some of these are just hard to make out because the letters were designed differently than our modern English text that we have today. The S's look like an F, you know, and you have to decipher. The U looks like our current English letter V. And when I first started trying to read that, I thought, what? Why are they spelling that with a V? And then I figured out, you know, I got to looking, oh, well, now that's that's an older style of English there that, you know, you have to kind of do a little deciphering.
A little different, though, than the Greek and Hebrew. It reads backwards. When it reads right to left, it's really complicated.
Actually, now the Greek reads left to right. Now, the earlier Greek read right to left, but the Hebrew and Aramaic, still, you read from right. Actually, that's the right direction. And the Hebrew, the little Hebrew New Testament, New Covenant that I had that was a parallel, had the Aramaic on one page and the English on the other. Well, now you know, you have your cover, your front cover. The front cover on it is over to the back. You start reading this direction and you read right to left. So, you know, for a right-handed person, I'm left-handed. But for a right-handed person, that ought to be right. You know, but anyway, it's now you talk about taking something, getting used to reading from the back of the book, which is the front of the book, to the back to the front, which is the back. I don't know whether I said that right or not, but anyway, it's a trick. It's a trick, but it's a lot of fun, and I love digging into finding out historical information that from the old letters and documents that that's where your research really has to begin. Is you got to get to the foundation and move forward, and that's the reason that I got this copy that came out. It was reprinted several years ago, and I got a copy of it. Now, the reason I have a copy of the Geneva, of this edition, is because many folks just don't seem to understand the historical importance of the Geneva Bible. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about that because when you go back in time, back to this particular era in time, the Geneva version, which of course it was printed about 51 years before the King James Bible, and in the 16th century it was the Bible of the Protestants. Now, when we think of what we call Shakespearean English, the Shakespearean plays and all that was with the way they're talking of hast thou any, you know, with the these and the thous and everything. Well, the Geneva version, that is the edition, the version that was quoted by Shakespeare. The Shakespearean plays were based on it. Now, here's a bit of information that maybe a lot of the modern generation of people, a lot of these things are not really taught in the classroom anymore. And some of the things that I'm going to be covering here were not taught when I was in the classroom. Like I say, that I can remember. If it was, I ignored it or didn't pay any attention. But the signing of the Mayflower Compact, where they signed the document, the Pilgrims, when they were all coming over to the colonies in the United States. The Mayflower Compact was signed on a Geneva Bible. That was the Bible of the Protestant Reformation. It was the Bible of the Pilgrims, the Separatists, the colonists that came to the United States. As a matter of fact, it was basically the only Bible that they were using. And as a matter of fact, this was the Bible in use in colonial America for about 60 60 some odd years before it was really kind of rooted out. And the reason I say rooted out is the King James, he didn't like this one because it said, now the government has no right to tell the believers, you know, if the king commanded them to do something that was kind of disobedient to Scripture and they didn't like it, they say, no, this says that we're not to obey you. And he didn't like the footnotes where the Israelites disobeyed a king when the king was in the wrong. He didn't like those footnotes, so that's the reason he hated this. And so when he said, okay, the Puritans, separatists approached him, said, we need to update a new translation. He agreed. But when he did it, he wanted all those footnotes and all that information taken out and nothing said about anything against the king or the government being in control. And he said, now you follow my instructions and my directions on this. And so when the KJV, the King James Version, was translated, the king eventually said, okay, we got this edition now. Now you folks for the Geneva Bibles, you got to get rid of them. You got to get out of the country, get rid of them. And he said the printing, 2 or 3 printing presses in England, he said you can't print anything else except the King James Version. So when the Puritans and the folks came over to the colonies, they still tried to get this one. But it had been outlawed. It was a felony to own one of these. Mind you, it was a felony. You couldn't own one of them. So eventually the only thing they could get was the one that was available. Not that it wasn't, it was a blessed and a good translation, but it wasn't exactly the same and took more liberties than probably in some areas than it should have. But anyway, that's the reason it eventually became so popular, is that the king said, and the colonial, in the colonial era, the 13 colonies, the Continental Congress and all that, you know, they were under the control of Britain, and they couldn't set up their own. They had no right to print anything of their own. A lot of people don't realize that the colonists, until the Revolution, didn't have a lot of the rights, and then after the Revolution. Now that's something else that's interesting, that I found interesting. Now, when we go to school, we're taught George Washington, first president of the United States. He was the first president after the signing of the Declaration, or the Declaration of Independence. You know, John Hancock and all those fellas. And so George Washington was the first president after the signing of the Constitution. But before that, and when people think of the capital, they think of Washington, D.C. Originally, it wasn't in Washington, D.C. There was no building there. There was no White House. And there was no building for Congress. So our capital then was in Philadelphia. And so the Continental Congress and the signing of the Articles of Confederation, and when good old George Washington was a general and sent out to fight, help fight the Revolutionary War, we had to have a leader. And so that means good old George was not the first president of the United States. A lot of people don't. Hey, we got coffee here. Hey, that's good. That's thank you. That's very
cup.
Beautiful cup. But anyway, the Continental, the Articles of Confederation was before the signing of the Constitution, 1776 and all that, you know.
A long time before my time, brother.
You don't remember that, do you?
I ain't that old.
I don't remember much of it.
You're talking about the Mayflower. I don't remember it either.
But when I found these little tidbits, these facts, I thought, what? I wasn't taught that in school, but actually, we had to have the states were independent states, and collectively they had kind of a superior over them, a president, and who kind of looked over the affairs of the state. They didn't take on as much responsibility then as the president does now, the current president. But they kind of looked after the affairs of the state. They didn't even get paid. They didn't even get a salary. So I found out that our presidential seal, you know, that you always see on his Air Force One and Marine One, and on the podium when he's speaking, you see that presidential seal. Well, now, where did that come from? Well, if your teacher has never taught you this in school, you might want to go back and say, where are you getting your textbooks from, and where are you getting your information on the colonial history of the United States? It doesn't seem to match up with real history. And a lot of times it doesn't. Because a lot of times we are fed an American pie in the sky lie. That doesn't really, a lot of it's made up. And a lot of it is just, maybe I shouldn't use that strong a term, but a lot of it is, let's say, shall we say, it's kind of a story that they insert to kind of make it colorful. We'll put it that way. But the first president of the United States, of course, then it was the 13 colonies and the Confederated colonial states. While good old George was in military and either getting ready or already involved in fighting the Revolutionary War against the British to lead us up to 1776, our first president of the Continental, appointed by the Continental Congress. The people during this time did not elect their presidents; they were appointed, and then eventually they got an electoral college. Because now this may come as a surprise, but the elites who are in control of our government, the wealthy landowners usually, or military like George Washington, the elites at this particular time, they did not trust the American public. They thought they were too ignorant to appoint their leaders. And a lot of people don't realize that for about 120 years, the American public was not allowed to vote for their congressmen. At least in the early stages of that 120 years. They were not allowed to vote for their congressman or, no, I got that wrong. Let me get it right. Let me get my facts right. Senators, they did appoint their congressmen. Two congressmen, two people, two men from each state was appointed. They got to elect those, but their senators, they did not get to elect. The senators were in turn appointed by those who had been elected to Congress. So they did elect the Congress, but the senators were appointed, and the president went through by appointment or electoral college, and the populace vote. When they did finally get the vote, it was only property owners. Now, think of all the immigrants that were coming here who maybe were renting space or sharecropper or something like that, and didn't have the money to buy property or anything like that. They didn't get to vote. Only property owners got the vote when they finally did let the public vote. So a lot of people don't realize that.
No, what the women went through.
And the women's right. And the people who came over as slaves did get to vote. They didn't get to be property owners. And a lot of people that were coming in, a lot of the Irish immigrants were treated as bad as the slaves in some instances. They were considered, some of them were slaves. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of the Irish were put into servitude in colonial America just simply because they were Irish. So that's another fact that a lot of people don't realize. But our first president was John Hanson, Hanson. And John Hanson is the one who designed, get this, John Hanson, our first Continental president, was the one who designed the presidential seal of the United States that is in use this very day, the one that's on Air Force One, Marine One, on the podium when the president is speaking. That is your president, the first president who actually designed that seal. It was designed by John Hanson, and it's still in use today. And there were about 7 more Continental Articles of Confederation presidents who followed him before George Washington. Now, of course, during all this time, we had some battles going on too, so a lot of this history kind of faded to the background when we won the Revolutionary War, and good old George was called the first president after the signing of the Constitution. But I think a lot of the American folk and a lot of the people in schools are not even taught that we had as many as 8 presidents of the Continental, of the Confederated States, under the Articles of Confederation. We had about 7 to 8, about 8 presidents before good old George. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate our
St. Patrick's Day yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Okay, St. Patrick.
I'll tell you, Brother Robert, I like history as much as you.
Yeah.
But we were talking about kings.
Right.
And my history goes back to what 1 Samuel told us. You ain't going to like him, because he'll take everything you got.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
And you know,
if that ain't biblical prophecy that comes to life,
it is.
I ain't sitting there.
Israel, all this, you know,
people
it seems like
we rebelled against God and we're paying for it.
It was an act of rebellion is considered is called an act of it's the same equated with witchcraft. And so the Israelites, they didn't want, their constitution was to be the commandments given to them. That was to regulate everything in their life. They didn't want that. They wanted to be like the nations around them. You know, they were looking out at the Canaanites.
They didn't want to try to live up to them laws.
The Jebusites and the Parasites.
They'd rather have a king tell them what to do. And boy, did that come back and bite them.
Well, they were told. They were warned.
Exactly.
He said, okay.
Exactly. That's history, brother.
Yeah. The Almighty. He told Samuel, he said, Samuel, they've not rejected you, they've rejected me from being their king and their leader. And he said, okay, now here's what you do. You go pick them a king. You give them a king, but you tell them what's going to happen when
they do.
This is done. They'll send your sons and daughters off into foreign wars, put heavy taxes upon you and burden you with taxation, and take your property when they want to for this. It kind of sounds like what we got today, doesn't it?
Well, I'll leave that alone, but you know, I'd like to have a vote in that right there.
I would have too, and you know, usury, a system of usury where they take your money, you know, and it's all, you got to pay all this high interest and everything, and Scripture says,
late to cry about it.
You
now,
don't,
Brother Robert.
You don't.
And we're not going to go back and change it.
Well, they better cry though, because the ones who don't.
The new king coming, they ain't.
There's
they better be ready for him.
There's going to be a payday. There's going to be a payday, and it's going to be rough when that payday happens. But anyway, I thought this would be something interesting. Just to bring out some of these facts, because people, you go to school, you're not likely to hear hardly any of this. It's just, you know, you get the basic overall rewritten historical, and actually it's just really not true. Just like Christopher Columbus. You know, Christopher Columbus was not the first one to come to the United States or the shores of the colonial America. He never sailed any farther north than probably Cuba, the Caribbean islands. That was the land he discovered. Now, he probably heard that there was a big island. I think he had been told that there was a big island. Christopher Columbus never set foot on the shores of continental United States. He didn't do it. And so the Spanish and the Leif Erikson and some of the pirates, those pirates and Norsemen, and I could take you on back to Phoenician history about coming across the ocean, but I'll not go that extent because a lot of you wouldn't believe it anyway, although there is documentation and proof. There's actual proof in the United States of ancient Phoenician Aramaic writing on artifacts dug up and found by archaeologists. But I'll not go into much detail on that because you ain't going to hear that in any classroom, and it wouldn't do much good for me to bring out those facts because nobody would much believe it because it would sound too much like a fairy tale to them. Because
would me, but you can tell me about an old American Indian, though.
Not that I don't think.
I mean,
exactly. I mean,
exactly. We're talking. If we want to say we were first ones here,
yeah, and but anyway, we there's a lot of history in pre-Spanish and pre-Anglican settlements of the United States, especially colonial America, and the continent as a whole, that is actually overlooked. And some of these artifacts I'm telling you about were written about in papers. They didn't have internet back in 1800s,
No.
They didn't. They couldn't download it on an app or anything. Look it up on an app. But
it wouldn't happen.
But the papers, printing presses, and some of the archaeologists of some of these facts that I'm telling you about that they had found, and the evidences of a civilization that was here earlier than what people might want to admit. And the artifacts and even skeletal remains, and now I'm talking about skeletal remains that would blow your mind if I explained it, but once again, what happened was these stories were actually officially now not a tabloid. They were written in like the Arkansas Gazette, if there is such a thing, in some of the papers, the newscast of that time. They were printing some of the articles and information of what the scholars and the archaeologists were digging up, and even showing pictures in the paper when they finally got cameras, and could take the old camera, where they put the hood over their head and they looked. They had some paper photographs in some of these official papers and documented stories. But when the artifacts were taken to the Smithsonian Institute that didn't fit a more modern narrative of the history of humanity, of what they wanted it to fit. Now, this is a fact. Smithsonian somehow or other lost those artifacts. They don't know where they're at. Poof. They're gone. So they say. But now, that's some of the things that have gone on in history and still going on. Well, let's just call it what it is. Could we say cover up? No. You're getting conspiratorial. No. I'm bringing out some facts that actually happened, and there are actually copies and recopies of some of those articles that exist, and the documentation of where some of these artifacts were turned over to the Smithsonian when someone went back to inspect them, or they sent scholars in. We want to see those bones, or we want to see this artifact, and the Smithsonian come back and say, "Oh, we can't find those. They don't exist. We don't have those." They were here, but we don't know where they're at anymore. Well, when it doesn't fit a narrative, people get careless. that are supposed to be documenting historical. But anyway, I just thought this would be something a little interesting. I know I probably have gone a little deeper, maybe than I should, because, you know, a lot of people, they cringe when you start, just like the first president of the Continental era here, John Hanson. Now, it's a fact. He's the one. That seal that you see, that presidential seal, a lot of people don't know where it came from. This is the guy who designed it, John Hanson. And so I just thought that would be some interesting information to bring out. So, you know, we done gonna run out of time. So I guess we better get off of here, finish our coffee. And so it's probably I hope you've enjoyed this bit of information. I enjoyed digging it up. Now, this is work. This takes a lot of time. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Say bye, Mountain Man.
Bye, Mountain Man.
Bye, folks.
Parrot Mountain. This attraction has it all, whether you're 2 years old or 90 years young, with hundreds of beautiful tropical birds and thousands of flowers, plants, and trees. Folks who visited our park have said, "I've never seen this many birds in one place. This must be what the Garden of Eden was like. The most beautiful and peaceful place I have ever been. These gardens rival the best. The best value in the Smokies. You'll want to visit Parrot Mountain and Gardens. Call or visit us online. We'll see you there."
Right the board.
Came out of next week's show.
People can see.
Hey, there we are. We're live.
All right, we're live here, Mountain Fun Live Studio, and we appreciate you joining us on our cooking show here with Mountain, our one and only Mountain Man. Now, I'm holding in my hand a Mountain Fun Live t-shirt. We are going to give this away on our next cooking show next week. We're going to pull a name. We're going to take the comments from the comment section. We will pull a name out of the chef's hat.
Exactly. So you better brag on me some now, or you're going to not get the shirt.
Okay. Now remember that. Brag on Mountain Man if you want
You
this
wouldn't
shirt.
believe what I had to do to get one. So this is a free giveaway shirt.
Next week, Mountain Fun Live Kitchen, join us.
What are we going to eat here?
We're going to take that baked pie. I just want to heat your oven up.
That's why we're doing cooking shows, is so we can
You
eat.
ain't going to believe it.
That's the benefit of getting to do this.
Now, I'm going to start crappie fishing next week, but we can't
We're going to eat fish?
cook. We can't cook them in here, though.